I never see another birthday. It's over with, Joe. If you love me, say that shit now, because this gonna be the last time. They never say it. If you love me, nigga, you really love me, nigga, call my phone, because this gonna be the last time you gonna be able to say it, Joe. I just up. It ain't nothing I can do about it. I just up, bro.
That is a grown man on Facebook Live telling the whole world goodbye. Minutes before he pressed record, he stood over the mother of his child and emptied a full clip into her while their little boy watched. She was 11 times and somehow lived. Now sit with that for a second, because the man crying on your screen is not even the saddest part of this story. Here is the first moment I need you to hold. This is Lasonia Agee, a mail carrier out of Chicago, who did just about everything they tell you to do. She got the restraining order, she moved into a secret apartment, she stayed in hotels, so nobody else around her would catch a bullet. And none of it saved her from the man who kept finding her anyway. Now watch that same man, the one who claimed to love her more than his own life, try to explain what he did.
I love that woman dearly, bro. I love her dearly, bro. I love that lady dearly, bro. I'm gonna stay strong, G. I'm over with, KT. It's over with for me, KT. I hope you enjoy knowing me, shorty. It's over with. It's over with, bro. Shorty. Shorty, you don't understand, shorty. You will never understand, shorty. I'm finna get off this shit, but shorty, it's over with for me. It's over with for me, shorty.
Here is the second moment, and this one is going to sit heavy. A 3-year-old standing next to a car full of bullet holes, tugging on his shot-up mama, saying, "Come on, mom, let's go." That just watched his own father try to erase his whole family in the middle of a Sunday afternoon. But before we get all the way into Lasonia's story, let's start with this story. Before Lasonia, before anybody was crying on a live stream for the world to see, there was a young woman down in Georgia named Crystal Williams who made one simple decision that women make every single day all over this country. She decided she was done. That was it. That was the whole crime she committed, and it cost her everything. Crystal Sharice Williams was a 22-year-old woman who came up with New York roots and a personality that filled a room the second she stepped into it. Her people did not describe her in soft, quiet ways. They talked about her like she was electric, like she carried her own light around with her. She was born on August 15, 1998, at North Shore Hospital in Queens, and she meant something special from the day she arrived, because she was the only girl born into her father's family for 3 whole generations. Her daddy, Mark Williams, used to tell the story of how she would bring him his slippers and greet him at the door after his long shifts as a sanitation worker. And that little girl grew into a young woman who was fierce and funny and did not take much off of anybody. When she got up in front of the crowd that gathered for her, Mark summed her up in a way that told you exactly who she was. He said she was not a pushover but a loving person who always told you how she felt, somebody who brought a spark and liked to have fun. She graduated from Brookwood High School in Snellville in 2017, one of the top schools in the state, and after that she went straight into hustling for herself, selling shirts and merchandise and building a lane as a beauty influencer, with plans to launch her own exclusive content online. Her family said she was well put together every single time you saw her, always posing for pictures, like she already knew she was a star. And through all of it, she was raising her little brother right alongside their mother, sitting for hours, playing video games with him and helping him chase his own dreams of acting and modeling. He thought of her as a second mother, and that is the kind of person the world lost. Her mother was the other half of this whole thing, and you cannot understand Crystal without understanding Daniel. Daniel Sims was 46, a warm, magnetic woman who was born in New York City in 1974, came up in the church, and eventually settled her family down in the Lawrenceville area of Georgia. She worked as an executive assistant, she gave her life to her kids, and everybody who knew her said she would hand you the shirt off her back and make a total stranger feel like family. She was also the kind of mother who told her children flat out that she would die for them. Hold on to that, because it is going to come back around in a way you will never be able to shake. Then there is the man Crystal chose, and here is what is strange about him. There is almost nothing to tell you about who Justin Turner was as a human being, because the record is basically empty except for the trouble. Justin Dion Turner was 23, And back in January of 2018, he picked up 13 criminal charges out of a single incident. And the ones we know about include aggravated assault on a police officer and running from the law. That case dragged behind him for years. In April of 2020, he got arrested again in Stone Mountain on that same charge, sat in the DeKalb County Jail for about 4 days, and walked right back out. By late August, prosecutors had cleared 12 of those 13 charges, leaving only the assault on an officer still hanging, which is exactly why he was a free man just weeks before he met Crystal at the end of everything. So this is the man Crystal moved in with, and the part that hits hardest is how fast the whole thing curdled. The couple had been living together for less than 90 days, roughly 2 months, when Crystal started feeling the walls close in around her. It went from a fresh relationship to control and fear in a matter of weeks. Her family sensed something off about him from the jump and tried to warn her, but you already know how that goes when somebody young is in love. Mark asked the question every parent in this spot ends up asking, which is, what are you supposed to do when a little girl is in love? A cousin at the vigil later spelled out the exact kind of thing they were worried about, warning young women that when a man is talking down to you or taking your money, that is not love, and that a lot of women miss it because it does not always look like a fist. And here is the thing about the red flags her family kept mentioning. They were not dramatic. Nobody described a single big blow-up that made everyone gasp. It was the small stuff, the off-putting feeling, the sense that something about this man was not right, the little ways he seemed to be tightening his grip. That is how it almost always looks from the outside, quiet enough that everyone second-guesses whether they are overreacting, right up until it is far too late to do anything about it. The family saw it, they felt it, they even said it out loud to her, and still they held back, because they did not want to push a grown woman away over a bad feeling. That hesitation is not a failure on their part. It is the exact hesitation these men count on. And Crystal had already tried to break away once, and could not do it. Her little brother made that plain, telling reporters she had tried to get away from Turner before and was not able to. So by the first week of September, she made up her mind for real. She was going home to her mother, and she was not coming back. Now here is the thing that anybody who studies this will tell you every single time, and I need you to really let it land. The most dangerous moment in an abusive relationship is not while she is staying. It is the moment she leaves. That is when the man who lives off control feels it slipping through his fingers, and that is the exact door Crystal walked through on the night of September 6, 2020. She did not know she was stepping into the most lethal window of the whole situation. She just knew she wanted to go home. On that Sunday evening, Crystal was going back and forth with Turner one last time, and she reached out to her mama for help. Daniel got in the family SUV with Crystal's 18-year-old brother Malachi and a younger child, and they drove out to the Dunwoody Glen apartments to load Crystal up and get her out of there for good. This was supposed to be the rescue. This was supposed to be the night the nightmare ended and she went home free. Instead, it became the night everything came apart. They almost made it out too. The SUV was pulling toward the exit onto Peachtree Industrial when the whole thing fell apart in a matter of seconds. Let Malachi tell you what he saw from inside that truck, because no anchor and no reporter can say it the way the little brother who lived through it can say it.
And out of nowhere, Justin cuts us off and comes out with a gun. And he pulls Crystal out at gunpoint. My mom gets outside. And my mom is over her, using herself as a shield for my sister.
That woman who always said she would die for her kids was not just talking. Daniel jumped out of that truck and threw her own body over her daughter, trying to catch every bullet meant for Crystal with nothing but herself. She wrapped her child up like a shield made of flesh and love, and she did not run when she had every chance to. And Turner did not blink. Listen to how close he was standing when he opened up.
And he was point blank, like he was right there, and he just shot. Boom, 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 and then all of a sudden, I guess he just pointed it at me. He just wanted me dead. I don't know how he missed.
Police found 8 shell casings in front of that family's SUV. Dunwoody officers got the call around 10:39 that night for multiple people shot and arrived to find 3 victims on the ground next to the truck. Crystal died right there at the scene. Daniel was rushed to Grady Memorial Hospital still fighting, but her wounds were too much, and she passed too, leaving this world hand in hand with her daughter, the same way she moved through it. Malachi was hit, but survived his injuries. and the younger child stayed inside the truck and was not touched. One mother and one daughter gone. One brother left carrying it for the rest of his life. And the whole thing was captured on the apartment complex surveillance cameras. Turner took off running into the night like a coward. The investigation itself did not take long, because the man left a trail a mile wide. Those complex cameras had captured the whole thing, the way he used his car to trap the family in, the way he yanked Crystal out, and the way he fired. And that footage has stayed locked up as evidence to this day. Detectives had 8 shell casings on the ground, a surviving eyewitness in Malachi giving his account from a hospital bed, and a suspect who had already run. It was not a mystery. It was a manhunt. He did not get far either. The very next day, September 7th, Dunwoody detectives caught up to Turner in Atlanta and took him down after a foot chase. They booked him into the DeKalb County Jail and hit him with 2 counts of murder, aggravated assault, and possession of a firearm during a felony, and later coverage laid out an expanded set of 3 aggravated assault counts and 3 firearm counts to match the 3 people who were in that truck. When he stood in front of a judge, Magistrate Judge Joyce Neal would not set a bond and ordered him held with no way out. 9 days after the shooting, close to 100 people gathered in front of those same apartments for a candlelight vigil, and the family did something powerful with their worst night. They turned it into a warning for everybody else. They put real numbers on the danger, pointing out that Georgia ranked 10th in the country for men killing women, that having a gun in a violent home raises the risk of death by 500%, and that firearms caused 73% of the state's domestic violence deaths over the previous decade. Those numbers are not just background noise either. They are the reason this exact scene keeps repeating in city after city. A gun, a man who cannot let go, and a woman right at the moment she decides to walk away. Put those 3 things in the same place, and the odds turn deadly fast, and that is precisely the trap Crystal and her mother drove into that night. And this was not even the family's first time doing this. One of Crystal's aunts, Asia Green, told the crowd they had already buried a brother to gun violence years before, and now here they were again, saying this was 3 times now, and that this one took her out. Crystal's father used the moment to beg other parents, telling them that if they see something wrong with the person their daughter is dating, to make it clear, to keep an eye out, and to call the police or a helpline before it is too late, because if he had known what was coming, he would have done exactly that. Months later, at the joint celebration of life for both women, an aunt described the moment she watched the footage of her sister dying to protect her child, and it will stay with you a long time.
And the fact when I watched that footage and saw how my sister cuffed her daughter, it was almost as if you were really kind of like looking, it's like she grabbed her wings and wrapped her wings around her daughter to try and protect her.
Malachi stood at that same service and cut right down to the bone about the man his sister had loved and defended when nobody else would.
Justin, everything she could have. And Justin repaid her by doing what he did.
And here is the part that will test your whole spirit. Crystal's father stood up in that church and did something almost nobody on earth could do. He looked out at everybody and said he forgave the man who killed his daughter and his ex-wife because he refused to let hate turn him into something like the man who did it.
Something you ain't never gonna believe I was gonna say. I forgive Joseph. So I get an amen for that? Amen. I forgive this man. Because God didn't make us to be like him.
That whole homegoing service, held on September 21st at New Mercies Christian Church, said everything about who these 2 women really were. Family flew in from New York and Washington and Maryland to say goodbye to both of them at once. People got up one by one and painted the same picture of Crystal, that she was the only granddaughter, the princess, the one who would interrogate any boy who came near her big brother, the one who packed her best friend's lunch and did her laundry just because she loved her. Her aunt even shared that just days before she died, Crystal had called her up excited about starting a t-shirt line they were going to build together. which tells you she was busy planning a future she never got to reach. That is what got stolen at that apartment exit. Not just a life, but everything that life was still going to become. That is a level of grace most of us will never reach, and you do not have to reach it to understand it. The rest of the family is still angry, and they have every right to be. Malachi said it as plain as it gets, that he would never forgive him, ever in his life, describing his sister as the family's light and the funny one, and the life of everything. And to this day, years later, there is still no public sign of a trial or a verdict for Justin Turner. He is still just sitting there, waiting, while a whole family waits right along with him for a justice that has not come. Now let's go back to the woman from the very top, the one whose baby stood by that shot-up car saying, "Come on, Mom." Her name is Lasonia Agee, and her story is different from Crystal's in one enormous way. Lasonia lived, but do not let that one word fool you into thinking she got off easy, because what she survived is almost harder to sit with than what she did not. Lasonia came up without much of a safety net at all. She has said her mother passed away when she was a child, and that she does not have a lot of family, and that small circle became a weapon in the wrong hands. Because a man who wants to own you moves a whole lot easier when there is nobody around to catch you. Still, she built a real life out of very little. She worked as a mail carrier for the United States Postal Service for a little over a year, and had just been made a full-time regular. She ran her own little business on the side, and she was raising the young son she shared with the man who would one day try to kill her. This was a woman getting up every morning and grinding for her child, not somebody sitting around waiting to be saved. That man was Larry Sistrunk, 27, out of the Austin neighborhood on the west side of Chicago. And just like with Justin Turner down in Georgia, there is almost nothing to tell you about who this man was outside of what he did. No real record of a childhood, no family stepping forward, no story that explains him. He shows up in this whole thing only as the shadow standing over Lasonia's life. That is a pattern worth noticing across all three of these cases, that the men doing the damage are practically blank pages, while the women they hurt leave behind rich, full, documented lives that everybody who knew them can talk about for hours. By Lasonia's own telling, the abuse started after their son was born in 2017. Small at first, then heavier. Until about a year before the shooting, it turned into something she described as excessive, unbearable, and nearly deadly. And the list of what this man put her through reads like a horror film that just would not end. She got a restraining order, and he violated it, showing up at her home and fighting the police when they came to deal with him. She moved into her own apartment without telling him where it was, and he still found it, popped out of a utility closet with a gun, threatened her and her grandmother, and smashed every window in the place until the landlord told her she had to leave. He destroyed the cars she bought with her own money, running one straight into a garage on purpose, and smashing the windows out of another before chasing her down the street with a bat. He took their son and would not hand the boy back until she agreed to come back to him. He got into her phone, her accounts, and her money. On Valentine's Day, of all days, he climbed into the trunk of her car and hid there. He even set up a fake apartment listing just to trick her into showing up somewhere he could get his hands on her. This was not a hot temper. This was a man running a full-time campaign to control another human being. And understand what she was up against with the law too, because she did try to use it. When the police told her they could only do so much because he was the father of her child and the court process takes time, that is not a small detail. That is the whole trap. A man like this learns exactly how much he can get away with, and he uses the slow grind of the system as cover. She filed reports, she got the order of protection, she did the paperwork, and he treated all of it like a joke because he knew the paper could not physically stand between him and her. Every time she built a wall, he found a way around it, over it, or straight through the window of it. And it bled into everything, including her job. The abuse got so bad that her coworkers started walking her to her car after they saw the man circling the workplace, and the Postal Service even offered to help her relocate to get away from him. Then she lost that job over an accusation that she stole mail, a claim she said was completely false and tied back to the abuser, and she said it killed her spirit. So read that whole list one more time and understand something important. People love to sit back and ask why she kept going back, like it is a character flaw. like it is easy to just walk out the door. Lasonia answered that better than anybody ever could. She said she stayed in hotels when she could, just to keep the people she loved from getting hurt, that she sometimes went back out of straight fear for their safety, and that everybody assumes leaving is simple when it is anything but. So picture exactly where she is, by early 2021. No mother to run to, a small family, a lost job, cars destroyed, addresses burned, and a man who keeps finding her, no matter what she does or where she hides. She was not weak, she was cornered, and she was still, somehow, trying to get free. And that word cornered is the one that matters, because it explains the thing outsiders never get. When people watch a woman go back to a man like this, they see weakness or bad choices. What they are actually looking at is a person doing math that the rest of us never have to do. Do I leave and risk him hurting my grandmother, my uncle, my child? Do I stay and absorb it myself so nobody else catches it? Lasonia was making that calculation over and over, choosing to take the hits herself to keep the people around her safe. That is not a woman who does not know better. That is a woman protecting everybody but herself, right up until the day the man decided that even that was not going to be enough for him. By the time we get to that Sunday in February, Lasonia had already run every play in the book. She had tried the police, tried the courts, tried moving, tried hiding, tried giving in, and tried getting out again. She was worn down to the bone and still standing. So when he pulled up to her one more time and told her to get in the car, and she looked at him and said no, understand that no was not a small word. That no was the sound of a woman who had finally decided she was done letting fear run her life, no matter what it cost. She could not have known what it was about to cost. Sunday, February 21st, 2021, right around noon. Lasonia pulled up to her home on the 7800 block of South Muskegon Avenue in the South Shore neighborhood, and Larry was there waiting for her, the way he always seemed to be waiting. Her 3-year-old son was with her, her grandmother, around 60 years old, and her uncle, around 53, were nearby too, just going about a normal day. Nobody had any idea what was about to happen on that sidewalk in broad daylight. He pulled right up beside her and started talking, calm at first, trying to get her to get in his car with him. She said no. She was tired of running, tired of the whole thing, and she refused one more time. In her own words, he said okay, then pulled up and just started shooting. And he did not stop with her. He shot her, then he shot her uncle and her grandmother who were standing in front of the home. He shot up the car while her little boy was still inside it, and he emptied the entire clip into all of them. Lasonia was hit 11 times, most of it tearing through her pelvis and her right leg, and that count does not even include the bullet holes he put in her car. Her grandmother took a round in the arm, and her uncle was hit too, with somewhere around 8 shots landing on the family in total. Through every bit of that, her 3-year-old was not hit, and that tried to save his mama, tugging on her and saying, "Come on, Mom," like they could just get up and drive away from it. Lasonia believes she knows exactly what that man was trying to do that day, and she has said it plainly.
I believe he was trying to kill me and leave no witnesses.
And do not skip past that little boy too fast, because he is the quiet victim in all of this. 3 years old, buckled in a car, getting shot to pieces around him, watching his father down his mother and his family, and then standing there, trying to pull her up off the ground. Whatever that child understands or does not understand right now, that afternoon is wired into him for life. He is going to grow up knowing the story, and that is a weight no toddler should ever have to carry. The same thing is true for the babies in every one of these cases. The ones who were in the car, in the house, on the bicycle, right in the middle of grown men's violence. They survive the bullets and inherit the trauma. All 3 adults were rushed to the University of Chicago Medical Center in critical condition, and Lasonia would end up in that hospital for a long stretch afterward, dealing with liver damage and pain that does not leave. But here is the miracle sitting right in the middle of the nightmare. All 3 of them lived. Every single person that man tried to erase that afternoon is still breathing. The whole thing was caught on surveillance video. And Larry, instead of running to hide, ran straight to his phone. He got on Facebook Live for the whole world to see, and what came out of his mouth was not really an apology at all. It was a man feeling sorry for himself. Listen to how he talks about the moment he emptied a clip into the mother of his child.
Because I can't even believe I just did, and I don't even know what just pushed me to snap like that, yo. I don't even know what just pushed me to snap like that, yo. That shit, I just lost it. I just fucking lost it, bro.
He did not lose anything by accident. This is a man who hunted a woman for over a year, who hid in her trunk and smashed her windows and chased her with a bat. But in his own mind, he was the one suffering, and he made it real clear he had no plans of turning himself in the easy way.
I ain't running. I've been on a run over a year and a half. I'm not running from these people no more, bro. They come get me, bro. They come get me, bro. They come get me.
Think about the two things sitting side by side there. On one screen, you have a woman clinging to life in a hospital with 11 bullets in her. Her grandmother and her uncle shot up in the same afternoon, and a 3-year-old who will carry that image forever. On the other screen, you have the man who did it, live, in tears, talking about how much he loved her, and how he just could not believe what he did, like the gun went off on its own. That gap right there, between what he did and how sorry he felt for himself, is the whole story of this kind of violence. The remorse is real to him. It just never shows up until after the damage is done, and it never once stops him in the moment. So they came and got him. He fled Chicago and turned up hundreds of miles away in Mansoura, Louisiana, where on March 15th, he surrendered to the Avoyelles Parish authorities without a fight. Illinois wanted him back, and on March 31st, right around 6:30 in the evening, Chicago police and a federal fugitive task force took him into custody at O'Hare Airport as he was brought back to answer for what he did. Around April 1st, prosecutors charged him with 3 felony counts of attempted first-degree murder and 3 counts of aggravated battery with a firearm, 1 set of counts for each person he shot, and set him up to appear at the domestic violence courthouse on West Harrison Street. Lasonia came out of that hospital a different person, carrying liver damage, constant pain, and the kind of fear that does not just switch off because the shooter is locked up somewhere. She said straight out that she would never be herself again, but she did not go quiet, and that is the part that should stay with you. She used her voice, telling other women walking in her shoes that they are not alone, and warning them in her own words that leaving nearly cost her her life, and that anybody going through something like this needs to leave as soon as possible, because his behavior is not normal, cute, or funny. She said people always think it could not be them, and that God has a funny way of proving folks wrong. She took 11 bullets and turned them into a message, which is more than most people could ever find the strength to do. And here is something worth holding on to as we move to the last story. Lasonia is the one out of these 3 who got to keep her voice, and she used it to say the quiet part out loud. She talked about how these situations do not get talked about enough, how women get judged instead of protected, and how the moment she needed the world to believe her was the moment right before it almost killed her. She survived to tell it. The next woman in this video did not get that chance, and the man who took it from her should never have been anywhere near her in the first place. Mayanda Moshe Thomas was 33, a Houston woman her family remembered as bubbly, dedicated, and full of life. The jokester who kept everybody at the family function laughing until their sides hurt. She lost her own mother back in 2008 and got raised up by a cousin she called her earthly mother, a woman named Verna, who stepped in and gave her stability when the ground fell out from under her. Mayanda leaned hard on her faith too. As a teenager, she got baptized at Greater St. Matthew Baptist Church, where she sang in the Angelic Voices choir and stepped on the Christian Steppers drill team. She earned a medical assistant certification from Everest Institute back in 2011, worked as a delivery driver, and poured every bit of herself into her 2 sons, because those boys were her entire world. She had a big, tight family behind her too, a long list of brothers and sisters, aunts and uncles, nieces and nephews, and the cousins who raised her when her own parents were gone. She loved a good laugh, loved a game room, and loved being the one who kept the mood light. The younger of her 2 sons she shared with a man named Antonio Williams, though her family made it real clear the 2 of them were not in a committed relationship, and the tension between them had been building for a while. She was trying to keep her distance and build something better for her boys, which is exactly the kind of quiet, everyday act of leaving that turns deadly in these stories. Now here is where you need to lock in, because the man in this story had already killed somebody once, and everybody involved knew it. Antonio Cornell Williams was 36, with a rap sheet stretching back more than 20 years, 6 felony convictions with about half of them violent, including drug charges, burglary, assaults on his own family members, and a weapons charge as a felon. A victim advocate named Andy Kahan, a man with more than 35 years in this line of work, looked at all of it and called Williams a career habitual offender, and he was not stretching the truth even a little. This was a man whose whole history pointed in one direction. You do not rack up 6 felonies, with half of them violent, including assaults on your own family, by accident. Every one of those cases was a warning light on the dashboard, and the system kept driving anyway. So rewind to New Year's Eve, 2019. The Bibbs family was planning a quiet night at home to watch movies and bring in the new year. Williams got into it with his ex-girlfriend, a woman named Ebony, then came back to the home late that night and fired shots through a window, killing her 60-year-old mother Melinda Bibbs and badly wounding Ebony, while a baby in the house somehow slept through the whole thing. Sit with that for a second, because it is almost the exact same crime you already heard twice tonight. A man angry at a woman, and it is her mother who ends up dead. Melinda was described by her people as somebody with no enemies at all, the life of the party, the grandmother who ran the domino games. Her son said it in a way that lands every single time, that losing your mother to natural causes is one thing, but when somebody takes her life into their own hands, it is a whole different world. And Melinda's goddaughter spoke to a fear that should sound familiar by now, saying the hardest part was knowing he was still out there, not being able to sleep, and not even being comfortable sitting near a window anymore. The family buried Melinda in January of 2020, and they begged for the case to be resolved before her funeral, wanting some kind of justice to carry with them into the ground. It did not come. Ebony survived her wounds, but she survived into a world where the man who shot her mother, was walking free while she was trying to heal. And this, right here, is where the system failed everybody standing in the story. Williams was not even charged for killing Melinda until March of 2022, more than 2 years after he did it, which meant the family lived all that time knowing the man who killed their mother was walking around free. When he finally got charged, his bond got set at $500,000, and then it got dropped all the way down to $115,000, which meant for a fraction of that, likely somewhere between $11,000 and $17,000 through a bondsman, he walked right out of jail while facing a murder charge. Read that again and let it sink in. A man accused of firing shots into a home and killing a grandmother bonded out for the kind of money some people spend on a used car. On top of that, he had a separate weapons case, and he pleaded guilty to it in September of 2023, got a 2-year sentence with credit for time he had already served, and was paroled out in March of 2024. And when he got out of prison, his bond on the murder charge got reinstated, so he stepped right back into the free world, with an open murder case still hanging over his head. Watch the reporter and the advocate try to make sense of a man who was somehow out on bond for murder while sitting in a prison cell.
I actually have a defendant who is on bond for murder while serving a prison sentence.
Think about that. You're on bond for murder, you're serving a prison sentence. Hadn't seen that one in my 35 plus years.
Kahan said in his whole career he had never seen anything like it. In Texas, getting a bond put back in place usually takes a petition and a judge signing off. So a bond just quietly clicking back on the moment a man walks out of prison is not how it is supposed to work at all. He called the whole situation utterly preventable, and that word is the one that should stick in your throat. Preventable does not mean unlucky. Preventable means somebody, somewhere, had the power to keep this man behind bars, and the chance to review whether letting him out was safe, and they did not take it. Nobody did that review. Nobody followed up. Nobody checked whether the man out on the street with an open murder charge was a danger to the next woman in his life. And while all of that got skipped, a clock started ticking on Myanda Thomas without her ever knowing it. Less than 2 months. That is how long Antonio Williams was back on the street before he did it all over again. Watch the report lay out just how short that window really was.
On tonight's Breaking Bond, this is wild. A 36-year-old repeat violent offender accused of killing his girlfriend last week was actually on bond for murder while serving a prison sentence at the same time.
Fox 26's Randy Wallace joining us now live from the courthouse tonight with the latest in his ongoing series. Randy.
Yeah, Anthony. Now, not only did Antonio Williams serve time while on bond, his bond was reinstated after he got out of prison. That may have cost a 33-year-old mother her life. You actually have a defendant who is on bond for murder while serving a prison sentence.
Think about that. You're on bond for murder. You're serving a prison sentence. Hadn't seen that one in my 35-plus years.
36-year-old Antonio Williams has 6 felony convictions. Half are violent. In 2021, Antonio Williams is charged with felon in possession of a weapon.
Yeah, he's charged in Harris County, felon in possession of a weapon, a firearm, and he posts bond.
In March of 2022, Williams is charged with murder in Fort Bend County. He's accused of killing 60-year-old Melinda Bibbs on New Year's Eve, 2019. Police say Melinda's 30-year-old daughter, Ebony, was also shot but survived. Williams was Ebony's ex-girlfriend. Williams' $500,000 bond is eventually lowered to $115,000. So for $15,000, he walks out of jail on the murder charge.
Correct. So now he's on bond for the murder in Fort Bend County. He's still on bond for the felon in possession of a weapon in Harris County.
September of last year, Williams pleads guilty to felon in possession of a weapon.
He takes a 2-year plea deal.
Last March, he leaves prison and his bond is reinstated.
What they should have done is followed up with him there in Fort Bend right after he got out and made either new conditions or reviewed his bond at least.
Williams is free on bond for the murder charge for less than 2 months when police say he killed another girlfriend, 33-year-old Myanda Thomas. It happened last Friday at 709 East 36th Street.
There's some sort of disturbance. Multiple gunshots were heard. The male flees the scene with the 2-year-old child on a bicycle. Officers arrive. They find that a female is deceased.
If his bond would not have been lowered, what happened last Friday would not have happened.
That's right.
Police say after shooting his girlfriend, Williams turned the gun on himself. He remains in the hospital. He's now charged with 2 murders. Reporting live from the courthouse, Randy Wallace, Fox 26 News.
On the morning of May 31st, 2024, around 8:45, Houston police answered a disturbance call at 709 East 36th Street in the Independence Heights area. Inside, Myanda and Williams got into a physical fight, and it ended with him shooting her multiple times in the bedroom. Paramedics pronounced her dead right there at the scene. And then came the detail that makes this one land even heavier than the rest. He ran, and he did not run alone. He took off on a bicycle carrying their 2-year-old son, the same age as Lasonia's little boy. Another baby dragged straight through the middle of his own father's violence. Police caught up with him about 2 miles away near the North Freeway, and as they closed in on him, he turned the gun on himself and put a non-fatal wound in his own body. Officers grabbed the child, who thankfully was not hurt, kept him safe, and the boy was later placed with Williams' family. Myanda was gone, and her little boy had just lost his mother, the very same way Melinda Bibbs lost her life years before, at the hands of the exact same man. Her family was left holding a grief that did not make any sense. Her earthly mother, Verna Hall, described getting the call as a nightmare she kept begging to wake up from, saying she just kept telling herself it had to be a bad dream. She called the man cowardly and said his actions showed another level of not caring about anybody but himself. And one of Myanda's own siblings turned that pain into the same plea we keep hearing from every one of these families, telling people that if they are in something that is draining them or is not good for them, to please take Myanda as an example and get out of it. Williams got charged with murder on June 3rd in Harris County, and Fort Bend County finally revoked his bond in the Melinda Bibbs case that same day, 2 years and 2 dead women too late. Andy Kahan did not hold anything back this time either, saying it flat out. Kahan argued that if Fort Bend had never dropped that $500,000 bond down to $115,000, Williams would have still been sitting in jail, and Mayanda would likely be alive today. Even the governor of Texas jumped in on it, saying if this career criminal had not been on the streets, Mayanda would still be alive. And this is not some rare tragedy hiding off in a corner. In 2024 alone, 161 Texans died from intimate partner violence. As of right now, Williams still sits charged in both killings, with no trial and no conviction on the record for either one, which means two families are still waiting on justice that has not arrived. And that delay is its own kind of cruelty. The Bibbs family waited more than 2 years just to see him charged the first time, and then watched him bond out, and then watched him walk out of prison, and then watched him do it again to somebody else. Mayanda's family is now stuck in that same slow line, hoping the courts move before their grief has to compete with the next headline. When people argue about bail reform, this is what they are really arguing about. Not politics, not talking points, but whether a man with a violent history and an open murder charge gets to be standing in a bedroom with a gun instead of sitting in a cell. And if you think this pattern lives only in these 3 names, let me show you how far it stretches. Down in Augusta, Georgia, in September of 2025, a woman named Melissa Cui Domingo had finally gotten free from an abusive ex-husband, so free that a court had even granted her full immunity after she once had to defend herself against him. She showed up to a Best Buy parking lot for a court-ordered custody handoff with her mother and her 5-year-old son, doing everything the right and legal way. And her ex-husband opened fire and both her and her mother right there in front of the child, who later asked the heartbreaking question of why did you shoot mama? Same trigger, same target, a woman leaving and her mother catching the fallout, in a whole different city with whole different names. That is how you know none of this is random. So look at these stories laid down next to each other, because the pattern will not let you turn away. Crystal Williams tried to go home to her mother, and Justin Turner blocked the car and them both. Lasonia Agee refused to get in the car one more time, and Larry Sistrunk put 11 bullets in her in front of her own baby. Mayanda Thomas tried to keep her distance from a man who had already killed once, and Antonio Williams finished the job the system practically handed him the chance to do. 3 different cities, 3 different men, and the exact same story playing out every single time. Here is the lesson, and it is simple enough that nobody has a real excuse to miss it. The most dangerous moment is not when she is staying, it is the moment she leaves. That is when these men feel the control slipping out of their hands, and that is exactly when they turn deadly. So if somebody you love keeps trying to leave and keeps getting pulled back in, do not judge them and do not look away, because leaving is the hardest and most dangerous thing they will ever attempt, and they need people around them who see that clearly and stand with them through it. If you know somebody who is showing you these same signs right now, do not just scroll on past this. Send it to them, sit with them, and help them put together a real plan to get out safely, because the person who finally gets through to them before it is too late just might be you.